The red light is on there, right? So let's start the meeting. Approval of the, do we have the minutes of the last meeting yet? No, have them yet? Okay. We're going to open the floor for this discussion, so there's no need for public speak time, and the mayor's not here unless Melissa or Lisa want to represent him in any way. Okay. John Sybeck is at least another half hour out. He had bad traffic. So what I'd like to do is review what we've learned about this in my own way by bullet pointing, going through what Section 21 means and how the process is supposed to work. When I go through it, I ask Melissa, Reza, or anyone to tell me, wait a minute, it's not my understanding, because then you're correcting me and helping me understand it, okay? So that's what I'm going to do first. Then we'll open the floor to any discussion we want. But I ask you, when John comes, to be prepared to ask him specific questions if you have them already, okay? What I've learned in reviewing this is that, and if I read it correctly, the council must vote on this to approve it by a majority vote. And that, based on prior written attorney opinion, we cannot rescind that vote. Once we do it, it's done. Anybody, Reza and Melissa, you agree with that? Okay. In my opinion, although I've heard people wanting to suggest that we don't approve Section 22 and or 23 separate from 21, I believe because 21 references both of them, we must approve 22 and 23. Now that's my opinion, but I just wanted to throw that out there because there was some discussion on it. The process is this, and I'm just going to bullet point through Section 21. We determine that the administration, that being a city or town's public authority, in this case I'm going to refer to that as the administration, would determine a plan and must show savings for the first 12 months of that plan and present it to the Insurance Advisory Committee, which exists now. Once that's done, notice is given to all of the collective bargaining agents and the retiree representative. Please correct me if I'm wrong about anything here. After that, a new committee is formed, which may be the existing Insurance Advisory Committee or another committee which may have more representation from the unions or collective bargaining units. That committee shall be called the Public Employee Committee and shall have the right to negotiate with the city any new plan design. One of my questions is why, but 30 days is allowed for the administration and the Public Employee Committee to agree to the changes as presented by the administration. I don't know why it's only 30 days. That's a question I have for Jen. If anybody has a reason why it should be only 30 days, I'd love to hear it. Anybody know why it's 30 days? Okay. The Public Employee Committee approves by a majority vote, with the retiree representative having a 10% vote. So if there's 10 members, that's one vote. If there's 20 members, retiree representatives have 2 votes of that meeting, whatever that committee is. That's in the language. You look puzzled, Grace.
No.
Okay. If yes, and this is a biggie for me, it's done. It's a done deal. If the Public Employee Committee and the administration agree to the health care plan as presented in this law, it's a done deal. We don't have to go on to the Municipal Health Insurance Panel. Everybody agree with that statement?
With the what?
If the Public Employee Committee agrees with the administration on the new presented plan and the savings thereof that will be generated, there is no further action necessary. The plan is instituted. We're correct on that. If there is no agreement, a Municipal Health Insurance Review Panel is formed. That panel exists of 3 members, one of which is nominated by the Public Employee Committee, one by the administration, and one by the Secretary of Administration and Finance from a list of professionals that would be agreed to by the administration, one of whom would be agreed to by the Public Employee Committee and the administration. If there's no agreement for that 3rd member, then the Secretary of something or other, Finance gets to pick that 3rd person. This Municipal Health Insurance Review Panel is basically an arbitrator. It has a lot of authority. Arbitrator of plan changes and costs under Section 22 and 23. If I read this, they need to review the plan. It must be 5% greater than those possible. There must be 5% savings greater than those possible under Section 22 and 23. Can someone enlighten me on that? I wasn't clear on that. Race or Melissa, do you understand that?
I think they're comparing to it has to be a 5% savings compared to the GIC, I think. Isn't that what it says? Isn't that what
That was my understanding. I thought it had to be the top plan. It had to be a minimum. You put it based on 5% savings of the top plan in the GIC.
Right, the benchmark plan.
Yeah, the one that's most utilized, right?
Right, the benchmark plan.
In the
And
GIC.
they always
GIC, so it refers to the GIC.
Yes.
Let's confirm that with John. That's a big one to me.
Right, yeah,
Okay.
and it's got to show at least a 5% savings to the municipality. And I think that it is that committee's job to go over all of those figures to
absolutely,
make sure that the savings actually are there.
Yeah, my reading on this, they have a lot of authority. This panel would have the appointment to agree to the plan, arbitrate it, or reject the plan entirely and start the process over, going all the way back to the Public Employee Committee and the administration renegotiating a new plan because they don't think the plan that's presented provides enough savings or whatever.
Yes.
If I understand that correctly. Also, it has the authority, it's a little murky, but I believe the savings that are generated must be distributed to subscribers to mitigate the costs of low income and or people who have higher out-of-pocket unusual expenses.
No, it can be. It doesn't have to go that way.
Doesn't have to.
But
Can be.
I believe, is it 25% goes?
Up to 25%.
Up to 25%, right. And that committee can decide how and what they want to do with that savings. They can use it to defer costs for people that are going to be adversely affected, such as
Someone who's
or retirees, but some of them put them in an escrow account or a trust fund or something to use to defer
Some
future
people
payments.
just use them to decrease
Yes.
premiums for the first year or whatever.
However, I'm just reading this sentence. However, that in no case shall the Municipal Health Insurance Review Panel designate more than 25% of the estimating savings to subscribers. In other words, the other 75% goes to the city
Yep.
in any savings we have.
The meeting's being recorded.
Just so you know, we're being recorded. The decision of the Municipal Health Insurance Review Panel is binding on all parties. And the Secretary of Administration and Finance has some authority, establishing procedures for negotiations with the committee and the insurance panel. So that, in a nutshell, is the primary process. Section 22 basically summarizes that the administration can present plan design changes that are not involving the GIC. It's in this section that if, and this is something I had a question for Melissa, probably can help me. It's under Section 22 that if the Hampshire Trust was chosen by the administration to be continued, do they need to demonstrate under this savings that's of any kind that's 5% greater than the GIC's best plan?
They just need to demonstrate that it's better than 5% savings over the benchmark plan of the GIC, and we have to prove that every year anyway. We have to prove,
If you don't choose GIC.
If you don't choose GIC, you have to show every year that you have to show your cost compared to the GIC benchmark plan.
So even if we chose another plan, if it wasn't the Hampshire Trust, under Section 22,
Well, that was the new, doesn't whether you select this or not, I compare to the GIC every year because that's what the state now requires.
they required that benchmark 5%. So if you do choose the Hampshire Trust, which we're using now, that has to demonstrate savings over the benchmark.
Which it does it this time.
It does now.
It does it this time, yes.
So, and just to say that, therefore, the Hampshire Trust is very viable to be continued, because if it's demonstrating that it's going to be a savings over the benchmark plan, there's no reason for the city, there didn't seem any reason for the city to choose another plan. They'd have to, be crazy, I would think, unless, that's just me. I don't see why they would choose a different plan if it's already proving to be the best plan, savings-wise.
Well, it's proving to be a better plan than the benchmark plan with the GIC, that's all it's proving.
Okay, then expand on that.
Well, there are other plans that are not the benchmark plans that are less expensive than our plan, and there are other plans not in the GIC that may or may not be less expensive than our plan, but we haven't looked at that yet.
All right, yeah, of course, we can choose others, but I'm just saying that the Hampshire Trust is a viable possibility, correct? Does not remove, and I'm using this term for lack of premium percentages from collective bargaining. That's still in there. In other words, what is it, 25.75 now? That's part of collective bargaining and doesn't change, correct, Risa? It's always there.
Contribution ratios.
I guess that's all I have. I'll open the floor to any other discussion until John gets here. Questions for the administration or anybody? Go ahead, sir.
I understand the administration paid like $10,000 a couple years ago to get utilization data from the Hampshire Trust. And have the administration done anything with that data to compare it to other things besides the benchmark plan of the GIC?
That data is old. You
Yeah.
can't use it anymore.
How old is it?
What?
Sorry, how new is this?
It must be at least 6 years old.
6 years.
And how old does it have to, how fresh does it have to be, data like that? Current, like within a year?
Yes. Very current.
As I understand it, also in this entire thing, a great deal of data has to be provided by the administration to back up the claims of savings or anything like that if they choose a different plan. Go ahead, Justin.
The thought I had on the way coming in today concerned the extent of trying to get at why we're moving in this direction. There was a clear time that I understood that we had double-digit increases in healthcare costs. I'm not so sure that exists anymore. And so I look at Chapter 32B. Are we also talking about the insurances for accidental death and dismemberment and life insurance policies?
Those aren't.
They're not part of this.
Okay, but when we budget in 32B, are they part of it?
There's only like a very small life insurance policy that's paid for by the city. 10,000 for active, 5,000 for retirees. It's a nominal amount, and all the accidental and all that other stuff is those people self-insure. It's an option. It's paid 100% by the employee. Is that correct?
Yes.
So is the life paid 100%, or is that split between the city?
It's paid 50-50 between employer and employee. And for active employees, it's only $4.25 a month.
Okay. Still, with the number of employees, there's a small chunk of what we budget that's based on it. Is that, anyways. So the thought process was, what is the real extent of the problem we have? And I was looking at, like, trying to create a little, looking at lists, as I say, I was trying to create a little chart that basically says fiscal year 10, 11, and 12. It's 13 is not necessarily, it's we don't have actual numbers yet. We have our budget numbers, but not actual numbers. And looking at the first line of that spreadsheet would be the percentage change, like 10 would be percentage change over 09, and on up the line. And then look at the actual dollar amounts. Because I have this feeling when I looked in the budgets, it's been a while, the percentage change has been less than 3% in the last 3 years. And that's not a substantial amount of money. So it concerns me because if we vote for this, I'm looking at, in order to gain our savings, we're looking at plan design changes. And I'm not so sure I want to go there, given what we currently have for our employees. But I'm looking for that information. I was we should probably lay it down and actually send either be Risa or both of you to kind of figure that out.
Well, I mean,
Melissa.
I can tell you, Risa, I know that this at least 2 to 3 years. How many years running is we on zeros? 3 years. 3 years running.
3 years running is what?
Zero increase with the trust.
That's incredible, really, compared to everybody else's.
Hey, Jim, we're being recorded for the cable television, so you know.
Okay.
So you gotta watch your language. You're not actually, all they're seeing is the back of your head, so.
Perfect.
Okay, well, that simplifies the problem. I don't really need a chart to do any work there. So I'm not getting the impetus for change at this point. If we've had 3 years running of where our increase in that budget line item has basically been flat. So, open to any type of...
Well, I guess my response to that is we currently don't have what I feel is a good method to negotiate any kind of change. Should it jump 15% next year? No. Is it going to do that? No. You know what I mean? But we just don't, because they're negotiated separately with each individual union, we will stall and not be able to change plans because one union's contract is tied up, maybe not even around health insurance, maybe around something else. The rest of the city is sort of, you know what I mean? Like, there's no way to talk about just health insurance. So that, and I'm not saying that change right now is a good idea, but if we were, the trust is keeping that rate zero by using their stabilization money, for lack of a better word. They will not be able to sustain that forever. So I don't know what the true cost increases have been for them.
Okay.
Do you know what I'm saying? Like, they're maintaining that. And so, that's why, you know, so that the other is that they pass this legislation. The state's very, they want us to use it. And we are going to have to answer for not passing this every year anyway. So whether we put it up and, you know, if my answer to them every year is we put it before the council and they just said no, then that's my answer to them every year. You know, so to not discuss it, I think is what would be worse. And I think that we waited this long instead of doing it last year, because right now all of our contracts are either open or their health insurance language is not in there anymore. So the contracts that are finished don't have health insurance besides premium language in there, and the other contracts are all open in the midst of negotiations right now. So we don't have anything binding us, a contract that says something contrary to this at this moment. That doesn't mean that they won't settle in something contrary to this won't go in there, but it's also why it came forward now.
That's okay. Is that okay? Yeah. Go ahead, sir.
I guess the only part I don't understand is the whole we can't do anything about it. That's what the Insurance Advisory Committee is about. We've had things presented to us, and that's what we're here for. If there is some sort of new plan or something out there, that those things come to us, we look at them, we research them, and do what we need to do. And if we see that there's a significant savings and change, then we go back to our respective unions and present those and do our union thing and then go from there. That's the whole point of the Insurance Advisory Committee, which has been a committee that I don't know how long it's been there. I've been on it for a while. That seems to have worked.
It's still collective bargaining, though. You can't take that away from it. It's still part of collective bargaining.
Right, but it's not like there's not a process that's already in place for that. We, you know, one of the things we did a couple of years ago was this whole dental thing. And it was, you know, initially the way it was presented, it looked like a great idea, but we did our job, and I think we did it quite well, and we were able to show that, you know what, it's not all roses on the other, you know, and it wasn't as good as what was presented.
Jason.
Yeah, yes, thank you.
So,
I just want to let you know that we're waiting on John Sybeck. He just came late.
Okay.
And as soon as he gets here, we're going to let him be the person you ask all the questions of, because he has limited time. Okay, just so you know that, because you're late. Go ahead.
all right. And I apologize for my tardiness. I don't know if I told you, I had some soccer canceled, but Girl Scouts wasn't, so, you know. Just two quick things. And one is a thought. The first one, yeah, I actually spoke to the mayor about 21 through 23. Reese, you were there. And I asked him, you know, how do you feel about this? Do you think it's going to be a good thing? It'll take it out of collective bargaining? And he said, doesn't mean anything to me. I don't want to talk about it. I'm just going to lay off firefighters. That was his
When did he
response.
say that?
He said that at the 3A hearing. You were right there. So, in his
Well,
attorney
you
was
won't
there
have to
too.
deal with that after, never mind.
So,
It's not for me to announce things like that.
the other thing I was thinking about, and I'm not sure, but under Chapter 32B, Section 19, they also have where you can take, you know, health insurance out of collective bargaining and put it into the insurance advisory and the mayor, and they have to negotiate with each other. And then if they don't come to agreement or what have you, then you're going to go to mediation, and then it would be arbitration.
But we were presented with Section 19.
No, Section 21.
No, before. And you decided you didn't want, what was the sections we were presented with
Three.
before?
Section 3.
All right. Well, I don't know what 19 says. I didn't study it. You got me there, so we can ask John about that. But 21 through 23 allows for a process that has an arbitration panel involved. It's the same, and to me, that's a good thing.
It is. The thing that concerns all of us is the 30 days and being able to immediately
It's a
push
big
something
question
through.
I asked right at the top of this meeting, and I've got it for John. Why only 30 days? It seems fast, and nobody can answer why here in the room, but I'm a little worried about that. Except that the administration has to do a lot of work prior to that, if I understand it, to present a plan, to develop a plan they want to try and do, whatever they want to try and do. And then you have 30 days to negotiate it. I don't know whether that means they give it to you, you look it over, and then once you meet for the first time, the 30 days start. That's one of the questions I have to ask. I mean, you may have time to study this plan that the administration is presenting, etc. So I have that. Those are questions.
Yeah, I think it says in there, Mr. Riss, that the day that it's sent to you begins the 30 days. I'm pretty sure that's what it says.
That's why the certified.
That's my understanding.
Yeah.
And
receives the notice as prescribed association.
Yeah, receives the notice. You are correct. All right, I was reading, I read over it fast today. You're right. Okay, so as soon as you get it, you get 30 days. It seems too short to you.
it seems very short.
Knowing how government works in the world,
I mean, just in contract negotiations, you're looking at 2 years, 2.5 years. I know for the last 3 negotiations we've had, and we're going to arbitration now, and 30 days, that's a second in trying to negotiate. And you're talking about, obviously, health insurance, but it's not just health insurance. It's employees, it's families, it's life-changing, some of the decisions that can be made. And to have them done in 30 days is just way too short. Doesn't show a lot of...
it would assume, on your part, a great deal of animosity between the two collective bargaining agents and a lack of trust. And I could see that, to be honest with you, from your history. But I think if the plan design, well, first of all, where that would become a roadblock to me is if the plan design presented by the administration is a radical departure from what you had before. My reading in here is that would be very difficult to pass through the municipal review committee that's formed when you don't agree. It'd be very difficult to have that happen. I know originally, I was going to say this now, but I'll say it now, that some of our members here were concerned that the mayor would have a great deal of authority to make decisions on his own. That's not what this does. This puts it into a panel, an arbitrating panel, where the mayor or the city administration is one vote out of 3. And I believe there are safeguards. So I don't think, so getting back to the 30 days, I think it's too short as well, but on the other hand, a radical departure in plan design, to me, would be very difficult to even get started there. But this is new to me, so I don't know. I would think that you'd start in incremental steps. But if you're going to make a major change in plan design, you're going to have to show savings, and there's got to be something in there. Yay! So let's go to John. Go ahead, I'll let you start, but I want, John has to be brief.
Just one comment in reference to the rate changes that we were discussing before, and that is if you were to accept this and the mayor chose to put us into the GIC. Once you're in there, they have complete control over everything. You're locked in for a 3-year period, and they can adjust those rates during that 3-year period. If I read that correct, which I think I did. And so where we are now, having had no increases for a number of years, if we're anticipating that there might be an increase, whatever that might be, we have the option of getting out or looking somewhere else or negotiating with the insurance company. And if we're in the trust, all that goes out the window.
And are you saying, John just left, but are you saying once you're in the trust, I believe you can get out of this.
At 3-year period.
The GIC, I mean, sorry. Once you're in the GIC, you have to be in for 3 years.
Correct, 3-year periods, yes. And then if you continue, you're in for another 3.
Yeah, but, okay.
Well, I mean...
It's not like you're in it forever. That's what I'm saying. Your 3 years is... It's a fairly long time if rates change that radically.
Correct.
Melissa.
Can I say that I think what you should really be more concerned about is that if you come out of the trust, getting back in the trust is a lot harder.
Out of the trust or the GIC?
Out of the trust.
Hampshire Trust.
Yes.
Because we paid a lot of money to get in the trust. If we come out of the trust, we'll have to buy back in again.
I'm not sure what you're...
What's sort of...
There's a percentage that we had to pay when we went into the trust.
I understand.
And it was like $23,000.
I understand.
So-
My wondering why you say that is it sounds like staying in the trust would be a good thing unless they prove, from your point of view, unless they prove a radical increase in premiums or something like that.
I'm just telling them what to be afraid of.
Getting out of the trust, you mean?
I mean, I just don't like being locked into one.
Justin, and then you.
What I have again is along the line of, is because I'm not really feeling the need to actually make this change, is of course there's enormous pressure on all counselors to always look at ways to find savings for our taxpayers, and our employees know that as well as anybody. And so without a planned design change, so we get into something that's equal to what our employees have right now, is there any true savings that we could achieve by moving into one of these plans? It's all speculation.
I mean, the only numbers that we have are the GIC numbers, because without presenting statistical data from the insurance company to another plan, they won't even quote us. So you have to get that information from the trust to be quoted by anyone else. So the only plan that you can look at right now without our Easthampton history is the GIC. Are there plans in there that save money? Sure. Are they dramatically different from what we have? Absolutely.
Okay, has someone done a apples to apples benefit comparison of the benchmark plan in GIC and what we currently offer to see if we have a better plan or
We have a better plan.
Okay, I'm going to hold your question off. If it's a question that maybe John can answer, you could ask him. But what I asked them to do is prepare questions for you, John.
Yeah, I apologize. It took me
I
literally
understand.
45 minutes
I
to
got
get
your
out of
message.
Boston.
What I am proud of you for is the fact that you take the time to come all the way to Easthampton on a difficult night. You're a good representative, buddy. You do your job. Thank you very much. So, the biggest question we had, which I raised at the beginning, and then Jason brought it up again, is why the hell is it only 30 days in a mammoth negotiation between the PEC, the Public Employees Committee, and the administration once they present a plan? Why 30 days? What was the thinking on that?
I think the reality is that if you're thinking about going forward, I think there's been a general consensus in terms of looking at things that municipalities sometimes take far too long to do anything.
Okay, but 60 days is still better than 30.
I wasn't involved in the negotiation specifically on that, but
you don't know
I know
what
there are
they're
issues in
thinking.
terms of looking at things like cable contracts, and there's some legislation I'm dealing with on that to try to shorten the time period. I'm not going to defend 30 days, but I think it should come as no surprise to a community if you think about going forward with this, that you're going to do it, and you should have some sense. I mean, at this point, your 30-day clock hasn't begun, but you're having discussions, so it shouldn't be necessarily a burden that you've only got 30 days.
What I said, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that any plan design change, which was a major radical departure from what existed previously, would be very difficult to get through. If the administration presented that, get through the municipal review panel, which forms because they won't agree on such a major change. So my thinking is, as you say, there is some talk back and forth, and once the plan's presented, that can't be such a radical departure that it's difficult to negotiate. You know, in other words,
Yeah.
it's not major changes in deductibles and everything else in the plan. But I'm just asking you if
Unless-
that sounds right, because if we're going to save a lot of, we have to save a ton of money before the plan will go through the municipal
Yeah.
review panel, right?
No, you're right, and I think the situations, if you're looking at larger plan design changes, then there's nothing to preclude additional savings and ways, in terms of mitigation. What I went back to get was something that came out, the end of the summer, or midsummer, they started looking at the first section of the plans that had changed. 47% of the savings realized on the communities that had already done it, we're going to go back to employees. Now, some of that was going to be mitigation in various ways to do it. So if you want a lot in terms of plan design changes, then I think, it's going to cost the municipality a bit more in terms of sharing those savings.
I thought it was only 25% max.
But you can wind up looking at the mitigation sorts of things. There are
Mitigation is separate from the 25%?
mitigation. Well, no, but also there are things that some people wound up looking at changes in contribution rates. There are various ways to look at that thing.
Oh, so they can negotiate
That's right.
contribution rate
When I
changes
left-
to mitigate the cost of the plan.
When I walked out and was hearing the question, the reality is that yes, if you were to go to the GIC, let's assume the GIC was the best plan. You're right. If you go to the GIC, you're in it for 3 years. And can the GIC increase their rates? Yes, they can. But the one thing that this legislation does not permit is to, in essence, change without negotiation those contribution rates. So there could be a situation where a municipality decides, okay, we went in it, it's costing employees more, so maybe in that situation we're going to negotiate with you changes in contribution rates, which if they did, could mitigate and offset premium increases. It works both ways in terms of both sides.
I got a question.
Yeah.
Why is the state so hell-bent on pushing these people into this GIC and that?
The state's not hell-bent in pushing them into it.
Well, it sounds like, listening to Melissa, that there are certain
No,
pressures.
They were asked to create this legislation for cities and towns, and they want us to say why it is we're not using it. Is that fair to
Yes.
say?
Yeah. We can look at the same things like, if we go back a few years prior to this, there were changes and proposed changes in terms of looking at pensions and local pension boards. And the governor came up and said, okay, if and I can think of the city of Chelsea, I think was one of the best examples, there were some communities whose pension boards, retirement boards, were achieving something like 3 and 4%. And the state was averaging 8+%. And the governor at that point said, if you can't match or do as well as we're doing here, then we're going to take you over. Because the reality was that if what he said was, in essence, you've already agreed on retirement. And it works the same way with health insurance. You've agreed to provide a benefit to employees and retirees, and you're going to provide that. And if you're not doing it in a cost-effective manner, then in essence you're taking more of your tax dollars to pay to pay those things. So you're paying more of your general fund dollars in the city budget to pay for retirement or to pay for health insurance. And at the same time, you've got municipal leaders saying, we need more money for Chapter 70, we need more money in terms of local aid, and the government saying, wait, time out. If you're not doing enough to maximize your return on investment, then don't come to us to ask for more. And so they use the GIC as a benchmark. And as of the middle of the summer, there are only something like 33 communities joined the GIC. So out of 351, we're only looking at 10% that joined it. Some were, Springfield was required to join as part of the things on the control board. But I don't think it was the expectation. I think the governor looked at that and here's what we see as a reasonable plan in terms of cost. And if your plan does better, if you think you have a better plan, if you can demonstrate that it's cost effective, then continue on. And what I had said right from the start, when I met with you guys, and I met with police and fire, I said, I don't think the communities are going to necessarily run into the GIC. Not from here, because of what we've got in terms of Hampshire County. And there are other communities in other regions, Plymouth, for example. Plymouth County, their trust seemed to be working very efficiently and effectively too. But there are other communities that didn't have that option. There were school districts, for example, that were not permitted and were not allowed to join the Hampshire County Trust. In that situation, it may well be that moving to the GIC is a cost-effective and a better approach or plan for them than what they currently do.
Go ahead.
My understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, was that the city has to answer right now, every year, on where we are in comparison to the GIC. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So from my understanding, again, correct me if I'm wrong, from my understanding, right now, comparatively to the GIC, we have a better plan that is working. We have a committee that's set up, and everything that we're dealing with insurance-wise is working. Why would we want to change, or why would this even be thought about? If we're already being compared to it, and what we have is better, why would we want to change?
I think it depends on how you're defining better. Okay, now there are certain things that, and we talked about it last time, there are certain things available through the Hampshire County Trust that are not available through the GIC. Like instead of the full plan, the plus one plan. And so you're looking at the number. So if I were doing an analysis, I'd try to figure out, okay, how many employees, for example, in the city of Easthampton take advantage of plus one? And so those individuals, if plus one,
93, by the way.
how many?
93.
Okay, so if plus one was eliminated, then is there something that part of your negotiation in terms of mitigation is how do I address a plus one situation? In other cases, it's as I said, I think the South Coast, Fall River, New Bedford, that area is another group that would not go to the GIC because of the availability of using certain hospitals. Most of the hospitals that the employees in that area like to use aren't part of the GIC. So it's not surprising that many of those communities are saying, no, we're not going to touch that because we want to still go to hospitals. So I think you look at it and try to weigh it. Are there benefits to going into the GIC or doing plan design changes? And plan design changes don't have to not just be the GIC. I mean, and there could be plan design changes. What we don't know, and I don't have a crystal ball, is will the Hampshire County Trust come down to the municipalities and the members and say, we're proposing plan design changes? The history of the Hampshire County Trust was in 2006, I believe it was. John Lillis met with the teachers, the police and fire, and said, we need to increase co-pays by $5 or $10, whatever it was, I can't recall. He said, well, if you agree to do that, then I'll freeze any changes in plan design for 3 years. And actually, it's been frozen ever since then. So although we're 6 years later, there have never been any changes. And what John did in the last year, I'm pretty sure it was last year as opposed to 2 years ago, your premiums didn't go up any higher 3 years ago?
3 years.
3 years, okay. But it was last year or the year before. The reason the premiums didn't go up any higher is he had achieved savings in terms of some prescription drug savings, took the savings, and rather than rebating those savings, actually used that to apply for premium increases. So although he faced, or the trust faced premium increases, those premium increases were handled by those prescription savings. I'm not here advocating for you to go into the GIC to do anything one way or the other. From my perspective, what this bill did and what this legislation did was allow alternatives and options that didn't exist for certain municipalities. If they make sense for a municipality, that's fine. If they don't make sense, that's fine too. But I also think it's important for the taxpayers and the voters of a community to understand that, okay, we've chosen to go down this path as opposed to this path, and here's the reason, here's the rationale. And there never was that sort of transparency available before in terms of why is this a better option as opposed to that option. And now I think there's a responsibility on both parts, on the part of the employees and on the part of the municipality to say, okay, if we're heading in this direction, here's the rationale. We think we can make savings. We think we can save money by doing this. The other side says, no, I don't think you're right, and come up with alternatives.
I have something that I want to let go of because it started with Melissa and the gentleman saying about the GIC, that we have to compare our plan, whatever we're using, to the GIC every year. I assume, Melissa, because of to demonstrate that our plan is better and cost-effective as compared to the GIC.
Correct.
So should we not do this and the Hampshire Trust suddenly costs more, are we obligated in any legal way, or is the collective bargaining agents obligated in any legal way to match the GIC or to prove? Because when you said that, I'm wondering if we're required to compare it, what's the consequence if we have a more expensive plan?
Nothing yet.
Well, what
Can
are
I
you
use that
implying?
word?
I don't,
Well, what's been implied to me is there may be consequences for that. Just like John Sadek was saying, is that, in the past they looked at and they said, are you doing better than us in retirement? No? Then you must. And I don't force that, and that's not true today. But they're saying maybe it will be one day. And so my part of my reasoning for bringing this forward is we bring it forward, we pass it, the trust is better, we did the process, leave us alone. You know what I mean? Like, what's the harm in doing that? And if it's not, then, we look at it.
well, there's no time limit on when we could approve these, right?
Is there a mandate?
Is there a mandate that says that we have to approve 32B, Section 20 and 23 by such and such a date?
No, there's no.
No.
All right. And secondly, can you expound on what she said?
As of this summer, Brockton, Easton, Kingston, and West Springfield voted not to adopt this legislation.
Okay.
So, and you can choose not to adopt it.
We could adopt it. We could adopt it again 6 months from now.
Yeah.
Adopt it next year.
That's right.
And so every year, all we do is we fill out a pretty simple report, and right now, we're with the trust, and they provide us the information of, with some information to fill it, and it says, why did you not use 21 through 23? Are you getting better savings than our benchmark plan? And, what's your reasoning for not going forward with 21 through 23? Some towns are going to say, you know what, we worked this out years ago with our employees, we have a great plan, we did this, we're not going to do it because, I talked to a community in the East Coast, and I can't remember which one it was now, but he said, I worked really hard to negotiate insurance 6 years ago, and just because he's like, I got a better plan than your plan, I don't want to have to fill this out, and I don't want you to push me into it because I already beat you. And so what the state's saying to that is, great, then just tell us that every year. Tell us every year that you beat it. And some people said in those meetings, my council voted it down, or my selectmen, or my town meeting said, no way. And that's part of your answer. Why are you not using this? Well, we tried and they said no. That's part of the answer. Or we accepted it and we did the negotiations and we're still not in the GIC, but we used the plan. And we used this legislation and we have a better deal than you.
The only other piece
just informational.
And I hadn't realized, I just read it again. It says the board of a trust, so the Hampshire Insurance Trust, may vote to implement changes to co-pays, deductibles, tiered provider networks, which don't exceed that of the GIC. Provided, however, each governmental unit that's a member of that trust shall comply with the requirements. So you may be forced to do this. If you choose to stay with the trust, and the trust says we're going to change our deductibles and co-pays, you're going back into this process. I mean, in reality, because they're doing, the trust can't unilaterally impose that on you either.
Don't all the cities and towns involved in the trust have to vote on that? And if they don't like it, they can just get out.
They don't like it, they get out.
Okay,
Now what potentially happens is, and I'll get to, what potentially happens there, if you think of the history of the trust, there were some communities and there were some desirable members, and there were some members that were considered less desirable. And now what happens if the trust were to make a change where up to this point, John Lillis says, all right, I'll meet with the teachers, the representative of the teachers, the police and the fire, we're going to go forward, great. If it now happens, and a community, let's say two or three communities, two of the larger ones who have the best record, the lowest utilization, decide, well, no, we don't like this, going through the process, they drop out, then all of a sudden, I mean, you can see some fluctuations that you might not have seen before in the trust. We'll just
As
have to
soon
see
as
how
the pool
that
gets
goes.
smaller, the premiums have to go up. Or something has to change.
If the trust, the trust could actually get smaller. The question is, the members who are left in the trust, are those members, what are the loss ratios for those members?
Right. Right. Go ahead, sir.
It seems to me that if the trust were to all of a sudden jack up rates or change the radical plan design, that would be the time that the city should be looking at changing it and adopting 21, 22, and 23. Right now, given 3 years of the trust being 0% increases, I'm not sure why that's before the committee at this point. It's like, it's not broke, why fix it? But you mentioned Plymouth County and how they've formed together in a regional trust, as it were, and were able to beat the GIC. The Hampshire Trust has been able to do that and beat the GIC. But what do you think would be the impact of Easthampton pulling out of the trust as far as their buying power? And do you think that Easthampton alone could negotiate as effectively as the trust does? Could we get back in? I mean, once
Well, you have to
pull
pay a
out,
lot to get back in.
not just the fee, but the buying power of the trust is going to decrease too. So their rates, Easthampton pulling out alone may actually cause, as you were pointing out, the trust to go up.
A community can pull out, and the trust could see that community pulling out is good or bad.
Yes.
In all likelihood, it's bad. And the reason I say that is if a community wants to pull out, a community that pulls out that has a poor loss ratio, that has a lot of claims, is not going to be able to secure a better deal than they will with the trust. Unless for some reason that community decided they're frustrated with the trust, will go to the GIC. They could probably go into the GIC without seeing radical changes, obviously, because of the size of the GIC, that they're not going to influence those rates. So, for the most part, I would think somebody pulling out of the trust is either seeing, the only people who would pull out of the trust, in all likelihood, would be the community with very little claims, who could perhaps get a better deal. But I just am not sure. Or if that community or a community wanted to choose to not necessarily self-insure, but wind up purchasing a reinsurance product and some other way to deal with catastrophic coverage. So there are ways that it might happen, but I think the only communities, it's far more likely that a community that's going to drop out is one who's got a great...
That's helping the pool.
Yeah.
One helping the pool is the ones who are going to leave. Because the ones who have the big loss ratios, like you said, you can't go to direct because you don't have the buying power, and if you have big loss ratios. But it's you never know. We haven't looked at it in a while.
Justin has a question.
The question I have is generally not for John, so I want people that have questions for John to address this
Okay.
question first.
Sir?
Is it me? Yeah. Is there any type of penalty to the city if this is not adopted, whether it be, we're not going to get grants, we're not going to be available for this, or any type
No,
of...
the only penalty that I can think of is if at some point, it's determined that you're not, that where you are is not adequate in terms of its cost relative to GIC, which is not the case.
So as long as we're showing fiscal responsibility, essentially.
And that was the whole purpose of it, basically. And it goes back similar to what I talked about in terms of the retirement stuff. So the governor, in terms of pushing in the retirement stuff, which did not happen, but put several boards on notice. It just, as an aside, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me that.
And we would obviously know that we were one of those.
Yeah, and that's
not the case.
no.
Let me ask some of the insurance advisory members a question I have. This is just, it's hypothetical. If the Hampshire Trust suddenly had a major premium increase, they had to change plan design, suddenly the cost was higher than the benchmark GIC. The administration said, wait a minute, we can't afford this now. Now that's you like your plan design now, I assume, and you'd like the city to try and pay for it. What does that, to me, that would be impetus for the city council to say, wait a minute, we need to get into this 32B. If that occurred, what's your feeling on that? If that happened, and I'm saying that could happen, it could easily happen, as soon as there's catastrophic loss in some community, New Hampshire has to pay for it somehow. So I just want your feelings on that. I mean, I'm looking at you because you're right in front of me, Jason, but I don't mean to.
And in my feeling, absolutely. I mean, at that point, definitely we need to look at our other options. I mean, right now it has continued, even when the state, when all the other insurance companies in the state or whatever are getting 14% increases, the trust is at 7. They're usually, 1/2 to 2/3 than the regular increase or the statewide increases. But if that was ever to change, obviously, we're going to do whatever we need to do. It's going to affect everybody. I mean, we're going to be paying too. It's not just the city that pays more. Our premiums go up also.
If I can add, I mean, the situation is, if I looked at this as let's say you were a board of directors for a nonprofit or for a small business here in town, the reality is, and you're right, over the last 5 years, a decade, they were seeing 15, 18, 20% increases annually and had no option. What this now does, I mean, it's conceivable that it could have happened over the past few years that the Hampshire Trust all of a sudden says, you're going to see a 10% increase or 12% increase. And your only option prior to that was to try and go out on your own or to just swallow it. And so from my perspective, that's where I think this is a good idea, because it now gives you another option. Right now, the GIC may not look to be your best option or your top choice. But if something happened in the Hampshire County Trust and you looked at a 20% increase or even a 10% increase in premiums without any changes in terms of your benefits, you might look and say, well, now the GIC actually looks to be an option, and you're not doing this thing in the other situation. What you'd be doing is going out trying to secure bids on your own and the likelihood of getting something. So I think it was prudent to offer it as an option. What people don't realize is we started several years before this allowing, and there was pushback from the GIC. The GIC did not want to allow municipalities in at all. And the response from Dolores Mitchell, her initial reaction was, well, we can't afford the infrastructure increases we'd have to put into effect. We don't have the bodies to be able to calculate whether you're an 85-15 or 75-20. We said, Dolores, you don't have to do that. You basically have to find out how many employees you are. You build the town will ship you the money. It's the town's responsibility to calculate those percentages. Oh, okay. And so what was happening is there were savings that were occurring right from the start. And that's why the control board required it in terms of Springfield and going forward. If it had not proven to be a wise choice for certain communities that gave them an option, this bill never would have passed.
Can I ask a question? I think I know the answer. Let's say that scenario played out in Hampshire Trust selling at 10%, and one of the options would be, okay, let's adopt this. We present it to the city council because we suddenly find out we're going to have a huge premium in healthcare. The administration says we need to try and do this now. Yep. There's still isn't there a long period of time before we could join the GIC or something? Or could it be that in that particular fiscal year we have to swallow that 10% increase until we can join the GIC, even if we passed it?
There was a problem last year, and I think that's why once this bill passed in I think it was August or anyways, last year, there were communities who wanted to do it but couldn't do it, and they couldn't do it because of timing.
couldn't do what?
couldn't join the GIC because...
Even if they passed the 32?
Even if they passed it. I mean, Dolores had a certain deadline, and I can't remember what...
So if this happened, and we were in, if we had already passed this section 21 to 23, then we could immediately look at options, go through the process. We didn't have to worry about the dead timing on that?
Well, there's a time. There's a
November
timeline.
1st?
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
There is, yes.
It's either November 1st or December 1st.
You have
So no matter what, you have that problem, even if you were in it.
We still have to give notice to the trust as well.
Yeah, so you still have these timing
The
problems.
dilemma that we had was we passed the law, the governor signs it, there are communities that were saying it, and I heard from...
I'm talking about next year.
I understand, but I heard from a community,
We can't.
because of chairing the Public Service Committee, I heard from a community in the eastern part of the state that said, we're asking our current provider, and they were part of a trust, we're asking the trust to give us our numbers so we can go out and actually calculate, can we solicit other bids? And they refused to give us our numbers. And I said, wait a minute, so we went after that trust saying that's not right. So the reality is, if you want to go out to solicit a bid, then you need to present your loss ratios, which they didn't want to share because they didn't want to lose that particular member. So it's no different than an open enrollment period that we have as employees in terms of I can't decide tomorrow I want to switch from one plan of GIC to the other. Unless there are certain circumstances, like you lose your job, your spouse loses your job, things like that. But the reality is a certain time period. So last year what happened is this thing passed, communities didn't have the numbers early enough. Then you had mayors and select boards that are working with finance committees trying to prepare the budget, saying, well, we need to have those answers. So it couldn't happen fast enough for many of the communities. And so they didn't join. And we suspect you're going to see more communities joining this year. Now that the numbers are there and they've got the time frame to do it.
I also think that it says in the law there that you cannot get into the GIC until 2014.
What?
No, I mean, I have a friend who went in this year.
Yeah, I don't think that's...
I saw that date, but I think it refers to something else.
It said that you have to notify them, if I recall correctly, by December 1st if you would like to be enrolled by July 1st.
Yep.
To start.
That's true.
And I think if you intend to get out, I think you have to notify them by November 1st in order to be able to get out. But in reading through that, I recall the date specifically of 2014.
No, the 2014 date refers to the public authority shall not increase the percentage contributed by retirees, surviving spouses, and dependents. That's the date that I see that refers to July 1st. 2014. I didn't see 2014 mentioned anywhere else, but I didn't read further into section 23. You do have to...
The reason it can't be right is we know that 33 communities have joined it.
Okay.
And we also know that we had cost savings of somewhere in the neighborhood of 78 million in the first year. So obviously they could not have joined prior to the bill passing. And if they've already achieved savings, then they're in the GIC. So they didn't have to wait till 2014.
Justin?
I'm going to ask my question because I'm going to have to excuse myself from another engagement. These are not for you. One of the things I like, I've actually had enough information from you and from John's presentation to answer questions. Actually, I'm prepared to vote, maybe not tonight, but next meeting I'll be prepared to vote.
Okay, what we're planning on doing, so everybody knows this, is tomorrow night at the council meeting, I'm going to ask that a public hearing be set for the next council meeting. And in between that, I'm going to select a date in which we can have a final meeting, in which the committee will take a vote for sure. I do not want to vote tonight with Justin gone, plus you may have more questions of John Sybeck, and I'd like to hear them further discussion. But we will discuss it again. Of course, it's an open meeting, everybody can come. But we will vote, and that'll happen before the next council meeting. This council meeting is on the 4th, so we're talking the 18th. I believe that's the correct date in which the public hearing will be set. We're not required to have a public hearing, but we will, because I believe it's important that everybody get something to say about this.
The next city council is the 17th.
17th is, what's tomorrow, the 3rd?
It's the 17th.
It's the 17th. So we might meet on the 16th, but I'm not positive yet. I have to talk. You guys available on the 16th? We'll look at it.
So
Keep the date open, I will go through Pat.
the two items that I'm looking at was the first concerns, one of the things that we like, especially as city council, is from our boards and committees opinion letters. And I was wondering if the advisory committee would like to offer an opinion, a written opinion to the city council on whether we should go forward with this or not go forward with this. Is that something they
You want to do it as a group or as individuals? It's up to you.
Do it as a committee.
I think you guys should meet and come up with that. That'd be great.
Yeah, the other is,
Present it to our next meeting, committee meeting, if you want.
because it's a public hearing, the affected members, the impacted members have an opportunity to come and speak to us. They're very generous of the chair to offer that. The next question is, and this is just as an aside to this bigger discussion, is in a calculation of the actual premium cost, I know it's a split, but in a calculation of the actual premium cost, is there a wage component to that? So as we see that premium go up, is it due partly because of an increase in wages?
It's 75-25. Doesn't matter if you're making minimum wage or 6 figures.
No, that's not what I'm saying. So the overall, the employees make $2 million one year. Next year, because we hire more people, we make $4 million. Will our premium cost, our total premium, not the individual premium cost, now go up?
If we hire more employees, it would.
Yeah, if we have more employees
The
that come
same
on,
as
if we
hiring
have
more employees is
attendance,
if the same number of employees get substantial wage increases, because then
That doesn't affect the premium if you get a
Doesn't
raise.
affect the premium.
No, I don't
That's
think
why
so.
okay.
Only if they have children. That affects the premium. You know, if you
If
go
you
for
add
a
a
single
child.
person and
Well, okay,
yeah,
you're
you know,
adding,
like-
you're adding.
Number of members covered.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's unlike a disability insurance that could be affected by what your salary is, but,
Yeah, I want to separate the two.
yeah, no.
Okay.
It's really just
I have the information
new
I need.
employees and more benefited versus non-benefited employees and, you know, basically singles versus families or plus ones, you know.
I'm not adjourning, it's just,
Yes.
well, we'll see.
No, I just turned the page.
You looked at me, I wasn't sure what you meant.
So,
Thank you, Justin.
I want to thank you for seeing you again, John. Thanks, everybody.
Let's take advantage of Mr. Sybeck, because I'm not going to make him come to another meeting. Anybody else for John? John, you said 32 cities and towns have implemented this?
33 as of
33.
August 1st, I think.
The more cities, let me ask you this, and it seems logical to me, the larger the pool grows, the better the rates go because there's a larger pool? Or is that really relative because some of those cities and towns maybe have high-risk groups?
The assumption, one of the assumptions that Dolores Mitchell, I keep talking about Dolores, she's the executive director of the GIC, one of her concerns from the start was that she was worried that bringing municipalities in would bring in more losses. Police, fire, DPW.
Because they're just unsafe.
Well, just, you know, that you're going to see, not, I don't see that necessarily, and I offset it with, you know, teachers. And if I look at, I don't think there's been any data to show it. We're not segmenting the municipal pool from the state employee pool. One thing that we are considering in legislation that would do a segregating pool, and I support this legislation, I support the possibility of allowing, I may have talked about it last time, allowing nonprofits, like a Riverside, for example, to join the GIC. If you know, same way that the treasurer, we did legislation this year to allow them to actually a retirement benefit that would be managed by the state, but it would be a separate pool. Thinking that things like health insurance premiums and retirement benefits are costly and expensive, and a small nonprofit can't necessarily afford it or pay the administrative fees. If we put them under, and what was said was if we did that, that would actually be considered separate. It would be a separate pool, at least initially. From my perspective, I think on the GIC piece, I would put them. I would advocate to put them in the same pool, because when I look at Riverside Industries or a small, a nonprofit agency like a human service agency, the population who's typically working there are younger, are healthier. The only exception with that would be maternity benefits.
Go ahead.
So you had mentioned earlier 74 million in savings that the municipalities have achieved.
That's what Gonzalez.
I'm wondering whether that's been offset by the increase of the deductibles and co-pays. Is that number including the cost shifting to the employees? Are they counted in that savings, or is that just ignoring that? Because you had said hadn't seen any data that the moving of the municipalities into the GIC increased the GIC costs, but the GIC specifically said when it did the mid-year change to the deductibles and co-pays that the reason they had to do it was because of the municipalities coming in.
Well,
that's the only data I have. I didn't see that.
The way, it comes from the State House News Service, and it was in July, and it comes from Secretary Gonzalez, who said municipal employees will receive almost half of the estimated $78 million in first-year savings under the state's year-old municipal health insurance reform law, which helped leverage $100 million more in savings according to the state budget sheet.
What do they mean by that? The employees would get that through rate reductions? Because I thought it was 25% of that 78 million goes to the employees. So I'm not sure. That's what cities and towns are saving money, $78 million? Is that what they mean by?
Well, see, what people often forget is...
Oh, it's the state too. No.
What's happening is the city has to give you 25%, up to 25% of the savings that the city's getting.
The first year.
Okay. So if the city is saving money because their contributions are going down on a per month basis per employee, then the employees' rates are also going down. I mean, if it's not, it's not possible that the city's going to save money per month on what they're paying for your premium, and that you're not going to also achieve savings. So the city has to give you 25% of their savings, but the employees are also getting savings. So I'm just going to pick a number.
Getting savings.
So let's say it's costing you. Let's say it's going to cost you. I don't know. Let's say $1,000.
Per employee per year.
Yeah, let's make it stupid. It's $1,000 per employee per year. Okay, and you're going to save $200 per employee.
From the last.
So you're going to go from $1,000 to $800. And let's say, to make it easier, let's say this is a 50-50 split. Mm-hmm. So the employee on $1,000, right now the city's going to pay $500 and you're going to pay $500. If you're going to save, each save $100, you're going to save $100 for the employee, the city's going to save $100, but the city has to give you 25 more of their 25 more. So the savings, that's where the savings exceed, although the city's savings are 25%, but they have to share with you, the employees are also saving in terms of those premiums. Now the offset for that is, okay, you're saving that, we're just talking premium cost. And the reason why the city is giving you that up to 25% is the city does not incur any additional cost in terms of those co-pays and deductibles. Only the employee does. So while you may be saving per month, if you're going to the doctor, you're paying more out of pocket.
But that's only 1 year, that 25%.
That's right.
So after, there's a 3-year, let's say we save money and go to GIC. Second 2 years, that 25% doesn't exist. Why didn't they do that? Because there's still deductions, etc.
The problem is once you go into the second year, how do you calculate what your savings are?
Well, because you're comparing it apple to apple.
That's right. It's no longer apples to apples. It's now apples to oranges.
And I suppose the offset of that for the collective bargaining units would be to negotiate the split. If you're suddenly paying that much more out of pocket, or your entire pool is of employees, then you ask for more. That's where the negotiation can come in if this were adopted.
So the cities and towns are seeing the savings, and essentially the employees are seeing initial savings weekly in their premiums, but in the long run, and especially with the numbers that were handed out last meeting, are costing the employees more money in the end.
Some employees, yes.
Yeah, I would say, well, I'd argue that it'd be a lot more than just some, but the savings, it's more the cities and towns saving than the employee. The employees are paying a lot more out of pocket.
And a lot of that's going to depend on.
Right.
A lot of that is really going to depend on the splits.
But that only lasts for so long. That money only lasts for so long.
No, the split premiums that you negotiate with the city.
25, 75,
Oh, that's
20,
that's
80.
what, I'm sorry.
You always have that to negotiate.
Right.
If you're seeing a huge, this gives me, and I have to be honest with this, more feelings of feeling more comfortable with it because you always have that. If you see a huge, increase in out-of-pocket expenses after the first year, then you have impetus to negotiate a better split.
We have it now.
Am I wrong about that?
We have it now.
No, but what's the chances of going backwards?
Well, no, you have a pretty good split, 75-25. What if it's 80-20? I mean, what I'm saying is, you can still negotiate that, and you have data to prove, hey, wait a minute, we're paying a lot more out of pocket.
But those negotiations take place in the 30-day window unless they...
No,
Unless it's going forward to a higher than a 75-25 split. If the employees are required to pay higher than 25%, then that's outside of the 30-day window.
No, the premium breakdown has nothing to do with this law.
It
has nothing to do with this. Nothing to do with
That's the bargaining unit.
But the bargaining units will still...
They still have that, and that's important to me, because if what you say is true, then I'm certainly against this.
Absolutely, but going backwards or so to an 80-20 or whatever, we negotiated a contract for almost 3 years, spent thousands and thousands of dollars, and we still lost another 5% and went down to 25-75. So the chances that we're ever going to go back up, I would say, are little to none.
To negotiate that with the city.
I would beg to differ, only that you guys are pretty good negotiators, from what I've seen
But
over the
we've
years.
never been able to negotiate
I
backwards.
know what you're doing, and that's not fair.
I just think you are, but okay.
No, I think it's going to be the other unknown that wasn't part of this, but was part of the healthcare reform. We'll call it healthcare reform 2 that the governor signed this summer. That actually looking to control cost is going to be an interesting dynamic. Where we're shifting from fee-for-service to accountable care organization. I don't want to get into the details of that, but the reality is that you may see that. And what you may see is that municipalities or may ultimately say, okay, I'll go back and go from 75-25 to 80-20. I'd rather give you the extra 5%. In terms of that, as opposed to the additional 1% that you want for a year in terms of the contract. I mean, I think what you're going to start to see is some interesting play between wages as well as that health insurance benefit. I mean, there may be a time that
I think, and where I see his point there is, if the city is realizing a lot of savings over a period of 5 years, say, and they can see a lot of savings, then for labor peace, they could offer that without losing, a great deal to the taxpayers. I mean, I'm just throwing it out there that it's different. Mm-hmm. It's also different depending on the personalities in the room.
I mean, very different. It's different on the municipalities. What happened was, as of like this summer, 77 communities have used this. And have negotiated.
No, 33 went in the GIC, 77 used it.
77 approved the 21 to 23.
And went somewhere else besides the GIC.
So 33 went in the GIC. 77 municipalities have used the law to negotiate $78 million in savings.
Oh, really?
At least 50 more use traditional collective bargaining, with the new law providing leverage to save another $100 million. Boston, for example, could not they were at a stalemate, and they were not going anywhere, and just before this bill passed, they said, okay, that's it, and negotiated a change, and said, we're not going to agree. So this got Boston off the dime, a few other municipalities. So people are using this in various ways. In some cases, it got them to negotiate where one side didn't and the other side did, or vice versa, and made changes. So some communities went to the GIC, some communities adopted this and made plan design changes outside the GIC. Some communities did neither, but the threat of this got them to say, okay, let's try to work something out in terms of collective bargaining agreements, and it's been all over the map.
Co-pays, that's not,
I think it's 75-25 split.
that's not it? Okay, you're reading that wrong.
I'm just asking.
Go ahead. Well, he's looking at a section there, but
Which section?
22B.
show him this section right here. That has to do with co-pays and deductions, and the public authority has the right to negotiate those. But the premium split is a separate entity totally, and this has nothing to do with it. And everybody, you guys all agree that that's not in this law, but that still exists in collective bargaining. So if this basically takes plan design, or what plan and provider you choose, out of collective bargaining. It does not, to a certain extent, because it's still the bargaining of the Public Employee Commission and the municipal, that panel. That's still there. But it does not remove premium splits. That stays as a collective bargaining possibility. And I think what you're reading there is something
You're
else.
right, I was referring to the fact they can just immediately go to 750 on those deductibles, and we don't have.
They can change, they can try to do that, but there's a lot of places in here where there has to be a lot of, as I said before, and I think John backed me up, if there's a major plan design change with radical changes in plan design, which greatly increases co-pays and everything, that would be very difficult, I think, to get through the municipal employee panel, that arbitrates it. Because that's, wait a minute, you're killing your employees here, and there's 3 people on that. I mean, does that make sense, Melissa? I mean, if you were representing the administration, that wouldn't happen. A major plan design change that would necessarily pass the...
I mean, to be fair, the GIC is a major plan design change for us, and if we look and compare to that, and that becomes part of a possibility, then, to say that wouldn't, it's part of what we're going to look at. It's a huge plan design change. So I'm not going to say that, what I mean?
I guess I'm not as educated as you on that, then, okay.
That would be a
Dan.
little...
Dan hasn't said a word yet.
No, I apologize, I didn't make the first meeting. And
That's okay.
I've read this 3 or 4 times, and I just had a couple questions for John. I know the benchmark is that's the comprehensive plan with catastrophic.
Yep.
So that's what they're talking, the benchmark.
Well, no, the benchmark, it's the Tufts Navigator.
So it's tough to navigate.
Yep.
Because there's quite a
But
cost
the
difference.
benchmark is really interesting. The benchmark is the GIC plan that has the greatest number of subscribers.
Okay.
So right now, that's Tufts Navigator.
Which is quite a bit less than the...
That could change, but the only, I guess the comfort zone for me is that when the GIC goes out to bid, her specs say that all the plans have to be essentially the same. So, although it may change from Tufts Navigator to, let's say, Unicare Community Choice, which is the one that I have, the reality is that doesn't change very much.
I understand. I just didn't know which plan, because I know the comprehensive with catastrophic is by far the most expensive. That's why I'm having a little knowledge of the system. Also, can you explain a little more about the municipal health insurance review would have the ability to mitigate cap for retirees, low-income subscribers, high out-of-pocket costs? Does this mean they could instill a 2-tiered system for employees where higher-paid employees would pay a higher percentage than lower-paid employees?
No.
How would they mitigate it?
Well, what they're talking with mitigation is you may determine, and as I said last time, and again this time, I mean, we looked at Boston, and part of my frustration was I would sit there, and I was sitting with a union. It wasn't police, wasn't fire, it wasn't teachers. Okay, it was another union, I was at a meeting with them, and they talked about the fact that, that they use several examples of individuals who, if we increase deductibles or if we increase co-pays, was going to be just break this employee's back because of the amount of use. We looked at Boston and a few other places. The percentage of employees who are heavy utilizers is under 5%. In Boston, it was about 2 to 2.5%. And what they're doing with mitigation, and the nice part, from my perspective, I think one of the nice things about this is nobody's telling Easthampton or any other community, this is how you have to spend the savings. So what some communities decided to do, and I talked to the PFFM, Professional Firefighters of Massachusetts, talked to the firefighters, and what they said was that there was one community, what they're going to do, we're going to take all the savings and we're just going to use that to reduce premiums. And the union president said, I'm not sure that's a good idea, but that community chose to do it, that's the way they want to do it. In other cases, some communities said, what we're going to do is we're going to cap what the out-of-pocket is going to be. So we're increasing deductibles and co-pays. We're increasing co-pays by $10, and although the plan may say, I think the GIC is $250 per person, $750 for family, they might have said, we're going to cap it at $100 per person, $400 for family. And when you exceeded that, they were going to take some of the savings and offset that. Some other communities said, what we're going to do, one of the most creative ones I heard was a community said, we're going to calculate what our savings are, and what we're going to do is we're going to reimburse out-of-pocket costs on a quarterly basis. So at the end of the first quarter, we'll give you an extra 30 days, let's say. We'll take all of the bills that came in, and if for example, I've got $50,000 in savings this quarter, and I got $35,000 in bills, we're going to reimburse everybody 100%. If next quarter it's $100,000 in bills and I got $50,000 allocated, we're going to pay you 50 cents on the dollar. And that community felt that was fair. And they allocated on a quarterly basis so people wouldn't rush to do all this stuff in the first quarter. And geez, I got screwed because the money ran out and I happened to get sick in October, November. So it gives the community the flexibility in terms of how they want to spend the savings and how they want to do it, which I would assume the members of the committee would actually go back to their membership and say what makes the most sense here, or what's our loss ratio. I think what it does is people may not be satisfied. It's really kind of interesting. To me, the analogy is, if I look at formulas.
Sorry, I was on the call.
Nobody likes the Chapter 70 formula in terms of how dollars are allocated and how come my community get this and other community get that. And the problem is nobody understands it. The only person who understood it was the guy that developed, I think it was the guy's name, I can't remember, the MIT or Harvard. He developed this formula, nobody can ever understand it, and he made money as a consultant going around explaining it to people after he developed it. Okay. Everybody's ticked off saying, it's not fair, how come we get less than this other community? In contrast, the Chapter 90 formula, which pays for paving our roads and bridges, nobody complains about because it's a real simple formula. And it's based on, the number of miles you got. And nobody complains that, Southampton gets less than Easthampton or Northampton gets more because there's a way to understand it. And I think that's one of the benefits of this. If people can understand exactly how you're going to spend the money and what you're going to do with the savings, then I think, it at least alleviates some of the concerns that people have. Fire away, next question.
No, just one more. And I think you touched on it earlier, but if the city went to the GIC, I know for retirees, state retirees,
yep.
And now teachers, municipal teachers can go to GIC
yep.
Currently, but they aren't given the same number of plans state workers are given. They have a lesser number of plans they're eligible to take, I believe. Some of them, like the Plus plan, I think are not eligible to teachers. I was wondering how this is going to work with the municipal workers. Are they going to have the same options if they go to GIC that state workers have? In other words, all the options.
Yes.
Yes. So there won't be any differentiation.
It's not different. And the only difference...
I know Springfield has. Does Springfield have some changes in here, like the difference where they can't, or kind of narrow, a little narrow?
Well, there are some GIC plans that are not available to everywhere. And there's some plans that are available here, I talked about one that...
Right, like
the
St.
Tufts-
Barbara Pilgrim, maybe.
Yeah, but there's also a Tufts plan, not Navigator, the other one, Spirit, that shouldn't be available here. But no, the difference with teachers, I mean, there is a difference in terms of looking at on retirement. There's a difference between state employees and teachers and teacher retirement or retirement plus that doesn't apply. But on the health insurance, it's the same. There's no difference. The only difference is there is a difference between retirees who are Medicare eligible and retirees who are not Medicare eligible, and there are differences in terms of premiums there. And the GIC requires that you participate in Medicare Part B just like municipalities do. So there's really not much in the way of changes, but differences.
Okay, it's getting late. Any last questions? Go ahead.
Just briefly.
Yeah.
And I don't think you touched on it. What was the purpose of this whole thing? Where did this come about? And for what reason? I mean, just brief.
Yeah. Saving money.
I mean, was there something that had happened that all of a sudden, listen, we need to start. We need to bring this forward.
No, the issue really became one of saving money.
Healthcare costs, unlike our city, skyrocket all over the state.
I mean, what happened is that they were all over the map in terms of increases. You are the rare exception. The fact that premium increase is not going up.
Okay. So I guess that's why I didn't understand.
And what happened historically is that the GIC increases over the last 10 years have been averaging about 6 to 8% per year. And the non-GIC municipal health insurances are going up between 8 and 18%.
So is this more to rein in the insurance companies?
Part of it.
Okay. Just curious.
Yeah.
The towns too.
Yeah.
Some make us save money, so the governor doesn't have to give us as much money.
There's no connection with not giving you as much money. What the governor said is, why should I give you more money if it looks on the surface like you're wasting money? So you're whether it was the retirement thing where you're getting 3% and the state's getting 8%. So, I mean, we're going to pay out the same amount for pension. We've got a defined benefit plan. So the reality is we're going to pay everybody's pension regardless. And if you don't make it up, if you don't make it in your investment returns, you're going to take it out of your general fund. So when some communities are up here and others are down here, or the state's up here and other communities down here, that difference is coming out of the general fund. So those monies aren't available to fix roads, pay for police and fire, or hire teachers. And the governor's saying, screw it. Why should I? You want more money. Why should I give you money because you haven't managed? If you're up here, I'll still give you the money, but I'm not going to give you. Some communities need to do a better job. The same way, and it's not picking on this issue exclusively. The same thing happened with school building assistance. Concerns were raised in terms of the school being built in Newton High School. It was like $90 million.
Yeah.
That they were purchasing golf carts and certain things like, wait a minute, are those necessities or not? And so school building assistance said, no, we're not going to reimburse those. And that's not the case. That's a far cry. They hired Graham Gunn, the Boston architect, to do their design, which cost them far more money than what we're doing over here.
Because that's the old plan.
Yeah.
The old school building assistance.
No, this was under.
Under the new
This
one?
was in a transition. Yeah, this was in a transition. So they were transitioning and approved, I think, under the old one.
Right.
Shifted over to the new one.
So I'll take that as a compliment that Easthampton's doing pretty darn good.
Yeah. I mean, I think for me, the positive part of this is you can decide what you want to do. There should be no surprises. Contrary to what everybody's concern was in the beginning, the mayor does not have the unilateral authority to say, this is what we're going to do. At the same point, if the city proposes something and you don't agree and you think the numbers are wrong, then you've got the ability to say, no, these numbers are wrong, and we pull together that 3-member board, say, all right, make your case. Same way, if you make your case and the city could make their case. And someone now decides. And I think that The carrot is potential savings for the city as well as employees. The stick is that if you don't do something, somebody make a decision for you, which may not be the one that you ultimately want. In terms of what ultimately gets proposed, so it goes to that three-member board, and they're going to make a decision.
You meant the stick was if you guys don't decide, the three-member board makes the decision.
We'll make the decision for you. So you lose some of the control. But I think, again, and I've said it right from the start, we're in a different situation here because of the success of the trust. But again, that could change. And I'm not suggesting that it will, but the other interesting thing that we talked about last time is the person who headed the trust is no longer there. And will this person be as good as his predecessor? And it's no different than what you see in the private sector in terms of looking at some investment. Look at Fidelity and look at their Magellan. Magellan was the best, most successful. It was huge mutual fund. And the guy who started it left, and then all of a sudden it started, and it's been fluctuating ever since in terms of who's overseeing the investments.
Okay, I'd like to conclude this meeting because we're definitely going to have another one to finalize our vote as a committee. Unless anybody has any further questions for John Sybeck, I am not going to ask him to come back and drive 100 miles an hour from Boston.
Especially since I did not drive 100 miles an hour.
That's true, you're all right. I'm sorry he didn't do that. I forgot we were on the air.
I hope the board doesn't mind. On behalf of the board, we appreciate you coming both days and spending this time. And
I certainly agree with that.
No, and I'm happy to. I'll give you my cell phone. I'm happy to answer questions.
You've always been like that with us. I just want to say that.
No, I appreciate it.
We do appreciate it. There was a lot of unanswered questions, especially the big one you mentioned early on, and then we did by clearing that up immediately. We were able to dig deeper into this, and I feel, at least for myself, we have a pretty good handle on what it is. It's the law and how we need to word some things, I think, in this letter to the city council. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
And I think if you guys meet and you find, we should have asked John that question, he's available by phone. I would advise you to meet. I'm going to look at the 16th, Chet, and see if we can do it then. That gives us 2 weeks for you guys to come up with ideas. Any questions you might have that didn't get answered tonight, I've got to run that by Justin and see if we can get the date, but I'll try to have that settled and announce it tomorrow night and send it out. But on that night, we will spend a little more time discussing it. I'd love to hear the opinion of the Insurance Advisory Committee. And, again, the opinion of the administration represented by Risa and Melissa here. Again, thank you, John, and that'll conclude the meeting. If anybody else has any other questions for John, now's the time. Hearing none, I move we adjourn, sir.
Okay.
We're adjourned.